Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to MyPillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. MyPillow.com. Promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Things are heating up over Greenland. Local Danish broadcaster TV2 said that the Danish Armed Forces confirmed a new contingency of troops described as a substantial contribution, and that they were headed to Greenland's main international airport Monday night. Tensions, of course, escalating with President Donald Trump over the control of the regions. We have an update for you. Fired CNN host Don Lemon suggested some of the outrage after he followed a group of anti-ICE agitators who, of course, stormed into a St. Paul church on Sunday, came from the, quote, religious groups who feel, quote, entitled due to, you ready for it, white supremacy. Yes, Donnie is now playing the race card on his role in disrupting a church service on Sunday. Only 1 out of 20 Democrats who may run for president in 2028 would say definitely that a man cannot become a woman. You can't make this up. This is according to a new report from Axios. And South Carolina GOP Chairman Drew McKissick joins us to further clarify what is in the two competing bills in the South Carolina General Assembly that would close political primaries in the state. It's another busy day. Let's jump right in.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
So, not sure where this is headed. Denmark yesterday says that it's ramping up its military presence in Greenland, deploying extra troops to the strategic Arctic territory amid the escalating tensions with President Donald Trump. Now, local Danish broadcaster TV2 said that the Danish Armed Forces confirmed a new contingency of troops. They described it as a substantial contribution and that they were arriving in Greenland's main international airport. Major General Soren Andersen, head of Denmark's Arctic Command, said that about 100 Danish soldiers had already arrived in Greenland's capital, and others later deployed to the western part of Greenland. The new military move comes in the wake of comments that were made by President Trump over the region's strategic and military importance. In a True Social post, January 18th, Trump warned that Denmark had failed to secure Greenland against foreign threats. He said NATO has been telling Denmark for 20 years that you have to get the Russian threat away from Greenland. Unfortunately, Denmark has been unable to do anything about it. Now it is time, and it will be done, he said. Now, on Monday, a text message exchanged between President Trump and Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Støre over Greenland and the Nobel Peace Prize was released in a statement. Trump said, before adding that there was no written documents, he said Denmark cannot protect that land from Russia or China, and why do they have a right of ownership anyway? He went on to say there's no written documents. It's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago, but we had boats landing there also. He said, I've done more for NATO than any other person since its founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Thank you, President Donald J. Trump. Now, before, according to Reuters, Andersen had said that Danish troop deployments was driven by broader security concerns, not by any statements by President Trump. Danish Defense Minister Lund Poulsen also said that Denmark has begun increasing its military footprint in and around Greenland in cooperation with its NATO allies and as part of efforts to strengthen Arctic defense. This according to Reuters again. Danish forces already stationed in Greenland could remain for a year or more, with additional rotations planned in the coming years. Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that the presence of European troops would not affect President Trump's interest in acquiring Greenland, saying, I don't think troops from Europe impact the president's decision-making process, nor does it impact his goal of acquisition of Greenland at all. The additional Danish troops deployment also came following President Trump's announcement that the U.S. would impose a 10% import tax starting in February on goods from countries that have supported Denmark and Greenland, including Norway. Again, I don't know where this is headed. I know that the president has expressed an interest in Greenland. Is this something that we need to be pursuing? Love to get your comment. Text me. Email me. Joey@joeyhudson.com. Leave me a message on the MyPillow message line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Always use promo code Joey when you go to MyPillow.com and take advantage of some of the great beginning of the year deals that Mike Lindell has for you. And you know I love my MyPillow products. So go to MyPillow.com, use promo code Joey, and you're going to find some great deals. Now, this is how bad things have gotten in Minneapolis, if they could get any worse, okay? A group of software engineers were showered with insults and accused of being pedophiles after they mistakenly were accused of being U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents. And they were just trying to eat their lunch in Minneapolis. You cannot even, why would anybody go to Minneapolis now? The men, they were all white males, dressed casually in sweatshirts and jackets. They were eating lunch at Clancy's Deli when one of them got an alert on an anti-ICE signal chat telling members that plainclothes agents were at the restaurant. The person who got the message on the Southwest Minneapolis Rapid Response chat is aligned politically with the anti-ICE cause. One of the engineers who gave his name as Lee told the news outlets. He said, my friend was shocked. He's on the anti-ICE side politically. He lives nearby. He's eaten there before, and suddenly he's seeing messages saying, we're ICE. After the alert was shared, dozens of anti-ICE agitators flocked to the restaurant and peered into the windows, according to a video that was filmed by one of the men in the group. So this kind of tells you how they operate. They have these chat groups that they send out notices. Oh, ICE was spotted down at the Hardee's, or ICE was spotted at wherever. In this case, it was Clancy's Deli. And they all start arriving. Now, do they not have a job? I mean, how do you just stop what you're doing and go harass some people having lunch, whether they're ICE or not? Now, once the group left, they were met on the street by a crowd. One of the agitators can be heard, if you watch the video, saying, you're a effing bootlicker. One said, get the F out of our neighborhood. I mean, these people, their vulgarity and their language is just horrible. I mean, I get it. Number one, if you want to protest and if you don't appreciate what ICE is doing, just say that. But to have to use the expletives, Mr. Lee said, next thing we know, people are yelling, I hope you die, and calling us pedophiles. One of the men tried explaining that they were software engineers just trying to have lunch. He said, we do custom apps for a whole bunch of companies around Minnesota and the country. Still, the crowd was unconvinced. Because, hey, look, they're looking for somebody to protest. They don't care who you really are. They're just looking for trouble because that's all they have to do. He said one of the men asked him, said, do I look like an ICE agent? And the woman replied, yeah, you look like a effing ICE agent. Get the F out. She started screaming as whistles are heard in the background. The cavalry's coming. The man said, "This is what's wrong with your guys' cause." And a woman asked, "Would you support us? The way you guys are acting, no, and I don't support ICE either," he said. "I'm just trying to enjoy my lunch." Wow. It's just crazy, isn't it? That these people are just, they're sick. I mean, they're mentally unbalanced to stop what they're doing and run to this restaurant because they got an alert from their little group text message that there were ICE agents having lunch. So what? Wow. I don't know how this ends. I don't know how we stop this. Do you? I mean, how do we get people to calm down in Minneapolis and understand that federal agents are going to be there? Federal agents have a job to do, and that's get the illegals out of their community. Nothing is going to stop that. I don't see Donald Trump backing down. Do you? But I just don't get how these people are just so nasty. And as I said the other day, Nana Hudson would wash my mouth out with soap if I used some of the language they do. Text me, email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. It's not your fault that losing weight is getting harder and harder. You're eating better, you're moving more, but your body isn't responding the way it used to. That's not willpower, that's metabolism. And believe me, I've learned so much about the metabolism from the folks at PhD Weight Loss, and it's made a huge difference in my life. Joey Hudson here. For many people, years of dieting quietly slows the metabolic system down, so the harder you try, the less progress you see. At PhD Weight Loss, they help people identify what's actually blocking fat loss, and they fix the root cause, not just count calories. If you want to understand why your body isn't cooperating, call PhD Weight Loss now and mention Fix My Weight Loss to unlock the New Year's special. It's free, it's personalized, and it could explain everything. Call 864-644-1900 and say Fix My Weight Loss. That's 864-644-1900 and say Fix My Weight Loss to get started today. You can also find them online at myphdweightloss.com. That's myphdweightloss.com. Start the new year off right and fix your weight loss. I debated on whether to talk about this today. Former CNN host Don Lemon, who showed up at the church protest in Minneapolis. I've had some of you say, hey, let's not give him a platform. But the fact is, he is in the middle of this story. And he's catching heat this week after he followed this group of anti-ICE agitators into this church in St. Paul, Minnesota. He's doubling down after suggesting the backlash came from, you ready for this now? From groups who feel entitled, religious groups who feel entitled because of white supremacy. Lemon, who has been operating as an independent journalist, if you want to call it that, since he was fired by CNN, he's been documenting, he says, the unrest in Minneapolis, following, of course, the fatal ICE shooting of Renee Nicole Good. So Sunday, Mr. Lemon followed this group of anti-ICE protesters into City's church. They were actively in the middle of their Sunday worship service, cameras rolling, congregation seated, worship underway, and there's Don Lemon with his stocking cap on and these bunch of idiots. The protesters, as you know, were shouting. Churchgoers didn't quite know what to do. Service was hijacked. Lemon filmed it, and he told viewers this was an example of First Amendment freedom to protest. I guess he believes that our First Amendment allows you to disrupt a church service. Now, that's where a lot of Americans, even ones who value free speech, kind of stop agreeing with him, stop nodding along. Here's the key point. A church service, it's not like a city sidewalk. It's not a courthouse plaza. It's not the town square. It's not a protest permit zone. It's a place of worship. Just that simple. People were there to pray, to sing, and to worship. Not to debate immigration policy, not to debate right or wrong or indifferent ICE enforcement or the federal law. That distinction matters because once protest tactics cross into private religious spaces, you're no longer exercising your free speech. You're imposing it on others. And most Americans instinctively understand that there's a difference, regardless of politics. So Don Lemon initially claimed he had just happened upon the protest. Later, though, when pressed, he admitted to the New York Post that he was part of the protest. He had followed them to the church. He had been with them the whole time. After the backlash hit, Lemon decided, I'm going to double down. He didn't back off. Instead, on a podcast appearance, he suggested the criticism was really about who he is, an independent, gay, black, happy, successful man. He also said the outrage was being fueled by intimidation, racism, and homophobia. And then came the line that really, really stuck out. Lemon said that some religious groups, he didn't specify who or which ones, have a sense of entitlement, and that entitlement comes from white supremacy. Here's Don Lemon.
And you are a prize for them, an independent, gay, black, happy, successful man. And this is an attempt to intimidate and beat you down.
Mm-hmm. I don't disagree with that. And I didn't hear the first part, but I think that there is obviously there's racism in it. The whole point of it is that they're detaining people on the streets because of accents in the color of their skin, and they're also targeting people of color and black people as well as brown people. So there is a certain degree of racism there, and there's a certain degree of entitlement. I think people who are in the religious groups like that, it's not the type of Christianity that I practice, but I think that they're entitled, and that entitlement comes from a supremacy, a white supremacy. Wow.
So let's just pause right there. It's not a criticism of protest tactics. It's not a defense of journalism. It's a moral judgment about faith communities, many of whom were simply upset their worship service had been disrupted. Had nothing to do with race. By the way, you got to remember, he and his group are the ones who crashed the church service. And here's where Lemon loses anybody who might have been following him, including people who don't agree with ICE, who don't like Trump, and don't watch Fox News. Because when everything becomes white supremacy, the term stops explaining anything. There are people who just don't buy that. Thank goodness. Churchgoers objecting to disruption, white supremacy. Criticism of a journalist's choices, white supremacy. Backlash to storming a sanctuary on a Sunday, white supremacy. I mean, at that point, the accusation becomes a shield, not an argument. And it avoids the core question. Was it appropriate to follow protesters into a church service and film it? You don't need to be conservative. Don't have to have a religious background. Or you don't have to be a Republican to say, I don't think so. Probably not. Definitely not. And Don Lemon knew that. He insists he didn't know the protesters planned to enter the church initially. Again, when he was confronted, he finally admitted to the New York Post, yeah, I kind of knew it because some video leaked of him with the group prior to them arriving at the church. And then he starts claiming white supremacy when he was caught. He argued that ICE is detaining people because of accents and the color of their skin. Said there's a certain degree of racism involved. Look, if that's true, it deserves to be looked into. We know it's not. Was he talking about Somalians? Well, I don't know. There's a lot of corruption in the Somalia community out there. That's been proven. They do have brown skin. But nobody has gone after Somalia because of race. They've gone after Somalia because they're crooks. There's a lot of crooks in the operating those daycare centers who are Somalian. There's a lot of crooks who have taken advantage in the Somalian community of federal dollars and other programs. It's not because of the color of their skin. So let's be honest. If a group of protesters stormed into a mosque or a synagogue or a funeral or a black church, while a conservative journalist filmed and justified it as free speech, how do you think the outrage would be? It would be immediate, wouldn't it? This wasn't about Christianity versus the protesters. It's about the boundaries that people going to church should have. Most Americans still believe that some spaces should be off limits to political confrontation. Churches are one of those. Now, Lemon says he became the face of the protest because of who he is. Isn't that what he wanted all along? Isn't that why he was there? Another possibility, one that doesn't require racial animus, is that he's the most famous person involved. and that he knew that going into it. Public figures get more attention, even if you are a has-been, even if you were fired by CNN. And when you've spent decades criticizing institutions, power, and privilege, it shouldn't come as a shock when people critique your choices in return, right? Look, this story isn't about silencing protests. It has nothing to do with that. It's not about silencing journalists. It's not about race versus religion. It's about poor judgment on Don Lemon's part. He exercised poor judgment when he inserted himself in this. And again, all because he wants people to click on his website. He wants people to click on his videos. Because nobody's paid any attention to Don Lemon since he was fired, and only now because this is a huge story. It's an international story. Storming a church during worship crosses the line for most Americans. And again, filming it, dismissing the backlash as white supremacy is kind of a stretch. Framing all this criticism as racist intimidation really has people questioning whether you really want to have an honest discussion. Again, I've said it many times. Oppose ICE. That's okay. Criticize enforcement tactics. You can criticize the immigration law. Many have. Many do. You can document the unrest that we are seeing out there. But once you start telling people that their objection to having church disrupted is rooted in supremacy, white supremacy, you have lost any credibility that you might have had. You're preaching. And ironically, that's exactly what people went to church to avoid that morning. And Don Lemon just showed up and gave it to them. Wow. I mean, I'd love to hear maybe from pastors and people, church teachers. What would you do and what would your reaction be if you're in church one Sunday morning and you got a group storms into your service and you got some journalists with them? Wait a minute. I didn't mean to say journalist. I'm not going to give Don Lemon that much credit. He's not a journalist. You had some person trying to sensationalize the whole thing with a camera and a microphone. What would you do? What's your reaction? Send me a quick text. Email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Firmin Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Firmin Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Firmin Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Firmin, Matthew Firmin. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Firmin Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Firmin Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Firmin Ford online at firminford.com, firminford.com. Boy, this is classic. So let me just start this segment with a simple question. It's one of a lot of Americans think already has a simple answer. Can a man become a woman? I can't believe we're having this conversation still. Not politically, not philosophically, just biologically. Can a man become a woman? According to a new report, that question has become radioactive inside today's Democrat Party. We've seen it, haven't we? So Axios reached out to nearly 20 Democrats who are considered possible 2028 presidential contenders and asked them three basic questions related to transgender policy. Should biological males compete in girls' sports? Should minors be placed on puberty blockers and hormones? And again, can a man become a woman? Three simple questions. And what they found is very telling. I don't know why I'm so surprised, but I still think, I still wonder, why can't the Democrats have a little bit of common sense? Well, first off, Axios says most of the Democrats they contacted didn't want to talk about it. They dodged the question. They deflected. Some just refused outright. They didn't even respond at all. Only one Democrat gave a clear, direct answer. So let's start with who wouldn't answer. Axios reports that several high-profile Democrats declined to respond or avoided the question, which might as well be refusing to answer. Kamala Harris at the top of the list. Does that surprise you? Nope. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Governor Gavin Newsom. J.B. Pritzker. Now, these are not backbench lawmakers. These are national figures. These are people being openly discussed as potential nominees for their party's Democrat nomination for president, 2028. And when asked a question most Americans would answer in about 2 seconds, they froze. And that silence tells you something, doesn't it? The one Democrat who answered, Rahm Emanuel, gave a clear response. He said his position hasn't changed. A man cannot become a woman. So there is at least one person with a little bit of common sense. Surprisingly, it's Rahm Emanuel, but hey, I give him credit. He said biological boys should not compete in girls' sports either. That's it. No qualifier, no footnote, no apology tour. Now, you may agree with him or not, but he answered, at least. I think most everybody listening to me agrees with it. Which raises the question, why was it so hard for everyone else to give an answer? And have you noticed there's been several Democrats recently ask that question and they just squirm? Who was it just last week? Was it a Senate hearing? And they were asked a question, they wouldn't answer it? It's like, well, this depends on the conversation. It doesn't depend on anything. It's as simple. No, a man cannot become a woman, period. A little boy can't become a girl. Now, a few Democrats tried to thread the needle. Josh Shapiro said decisions about transgender participation in sports should be left to local officials. He added that he personally doesn't believe anyone should have an unfair advantage on the playing field. Translation, I see the issue, but please don't make me say it out loud. Pete Buttigieg didn't answer directly either. Instead, a spokesperson pointed Axios to an old NPR interview where he acknowledged serious fairness issues in women's sports and called for compassion. Look, Pete, girls don't want compassion. They want common sense. They don't want boys competing with them in their own sports. Again, Buttigieg, no direct answer to the core question. Compassion is not the same thing as answering the question. Now, Gavin Newsom, sort of an awkward moment. He addressed this recently, not as a response to Axios, but he addressed this recently on his podcast when conservative commentator Ben Shapiro joined him. Shapiro asked him directly. Now, again, it was Gavin Newsom's podcast. Shapiro just happened to ask the question. Very simply, can boys become girls? He stumbled a bit. Here's his response.
I'm with the Governor Spencer Cox, who said about many of these issues, never so much attention been placed on so few people.
The problem is, I do think that on an electoral level, to go to the politics, it is a barrier to entry for a lot of people. When
I agree with that.
When you say a boy can become a girl. And then just on a realistic...
And by the way, I respect if that's your barrier to then listening to people on a myriad of other issues, so be it. It is what it is.
I find it strange that even if you wish to have a public policy that pursues something different, we cannot just admit that boys and girls are two different things and that a boy cannot become a girl. Why is this so difficult?
Yeah. I understand your point of view.
I understand your point of view. That's not an answer. That's a politician trying to escape the room, trying to get out of his own podcast. When Shapiro pressed him on why the question was so difficult, Newsom was all about, well, so few people. He talked about empathy, hate, bigotry. Now, listen, no one's denying that some people struggle with gender identity because society has allowed this to get to such a level. No one is denying their humanity. But coming to terms with biological reality, that's not hate. And saying boys can't become girls is not bigotry. It's just basic science. It has been since God made us. Even Newsom himself admitted last year in a conversation with Charlie Kirk that it's deeply unfair for transgender females to compete in girls' sports. So again, why the hesitation now? Well, one of the most common deflections you hear is such a small number of people. Okay? Small numbers don't negate big principles. We don't decide truth by head count. We don't decide biology by polling. And we don't suspend reality just because the topic is sensitive and you might be running for president. I mean, who do they think they're appealing to? Because don't you think most Americans truly believe in the biological science that boys can't become girls? I don't get it. If the science weren't clear, then it might be, if it's questionable, there might be a question here. The politics is easy here, though. These answers wouldn't require press teams, podcast explanations, or strategic silence. Just admit the truth. Biology is biology. The fact that they do tells the party is deeply divided, and they're scared to death of the leftists in the Democrat Party. They don't want a soundbite coming back to bite them in the Democrat primary in 2028. And here's the truth. Many Democrats know where the public is on this issue. Polling shows majorities, including Democrats, oppose biological males competing in women's sports. Parents are uneasy. Voters are confused. Independents are drifting away from the party. But the activist base, the ones that are the loudest, the ones that we're seeing out on the streets of Minneapolis, they demand total ideological conformity or they'll come after you. And so just don't answer the question. Kind of save yourself the hassle, right? I mean, one wrong sentence, one incorrect answer, and you're labeled a bigot, a traitor, or worse. It's just crazy. Politicians freeze, they dodge, they talk about compassion instead of policy. They hope the question goes away. But guess what? It's not going to go away. It's going to keep coming back. And Gavin Newsom eventually and the others are going to have to answer it. And we're going to be listening. On our guest line today, Chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party, Drew McKissick. Welcome and happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday to you too, sir. Hope you had a good weekend.
Had a wonderful weekend and ready for another week. It's going to be a busy week. Let's talk specifics. And you and I have kind of touched on these two bills that are in the House right now, House Bill 3310 and 3643. These bills would, in one form or fashion, close our primaries. Now, closing our primaries has been an issue that we've been talking about literally for decades. These two bills would accomplish this in different ways. So let's just talk about, and I'd be interested in you giving us a sort of a quick history of the issue and talk about the bill that the SCGOP has endorsed and why.
Well, to begin with, as you point out, we've been pushing this for decades. Since I've been involved in the party, which goes back to the late 80s, Republicans have been working to try to get a system where Republicans are the ones who pick Republican nominees. The most important thing that a political party can do is to choose candidates to represent them on the ballot. So why, when we do that most important thing, would we open the door to every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the world? But unfortunately, that's the system we have, which we inherited from, Democrat election law. It was written 60 to 70 years ago. That's essentially what we're operating under. And we wanted to change that. And so we, over the course of, the last 4 primary cycles, you've noticed that we put that question on our primary ballot, ask folks if they think it should be able to register by party in South Carolina, and an average of 82% of people have said yes. About 1.5 million votes have been cast in favor of it. So definitely support for it among Republicans. It's in our platform. And most recently, our state executive committee has passed a unanimous resolution in favor of the bill you just referenced, 3643. So that bill was written about 3+ years ago. We put that together in conjunction with some folks in the House. The party had generous input into the details of that, making sure that it would work with how we typically run primaries, wouldn't interfere with existing election law, and just the principles of Republicans running their own nomination process. So That was introduced in December of 23. We pushed it, passed a resolution in favor of it, pushed it in the legislature in 24. Of course, the end of 24, that session died. We introduced it again in December of 24 for the 25 session. We passed another resolution in favor of it, worked for it in the legislature, and got up to the point where we are now with the legislature back in town. In December, our state executive committee passed another unanimous resolution in favor of it. And have been working to promote it ever since. And now, finally, for the first time ever, we're getting a subcommittee hearing. So this is as far as we've ever gotten, by the way, to have a subcommittee hearing on the bill. The bill would functionally do this. Number one, it would say that when it comes to voter registration, you have the ability to pick a party or you would remain unaffiliated. When the primaries come around, the only people who could vote in a party primary would be people that are, number one, registered with that party, or two, are unaffiliated. But if an unaffiliated person votes in the primary, it automatically registers them with our party. So effectively, it becomes an enrollment bill. The primary process enrolls people in our party. Going forward, once you have become registered, then you would have to change parties 45 days in advance of trying to vote in any other party's primary. And then you have the candidate side of the question. Who should be able to run in a party's primary? I think the parties ought to be able to have a little bit of say over that. You know, that's the other half of the problem. It's not just who's voting in the primary, it's who gets to run in the primary. So what this bill would say is, number one, if you're going to be a candidate in a party's primary, you have to, one, be registered with that party 45 days in advance of filing, and two, that you have to have voted in at least 2 out of the last 3 of that party's statewide primaries, which is basically an objective measure of how much you really support that party. Failing that, outside of that, the state party's executive committee, which is made up of 46 freely elected people in every county all across the state, would vote to give you a waiver if necessary. In other words, if I'm trying to switch a local Democrat sheriff, he's been there forever, solid conservative guy, our party folks want him to switch, our state committee could give him a waiver and put him on the ballot. That gives us control of who's picking our nominees and who could potentially be our nominees by way of, you know, our qualifications.
So if a candidate who has been a lifelong Democrat, maybe even served as a Democrat office holder, approached the state party, then the executive committee could offer this waiver. Now, is that a majority of the committee, 2/3, or what's? Yeah.
Yes. So in other words, what it does is anybody who doesn't fit the first category just decides to register with our party and has been voting in our primaries, which would be 95% of all of your candidates out there who would want to run as a Republican, by the way. But you've got that small percentage that wouldn't fit in that category either by way of they are a Democrat who wants to switch. So we have then the ability to decide whether we want to let them switch. That's fair.
Yeah.
Or it also covers people who have been living outside of South Carolina. Maybe they've moved here or been serving in the military and haven't had the chance to vote in our primaries. Our executive committee could give them a waiver and put them on our ballot. But at the end of the day, the party, no matter what party, Democrat Party, Republican Party, whatever, ought to be able to control or have a say in the qualifications to be the nominee of that party. And that's what this bill would do.
Yeah. Drew McKissick is our guest today. He's chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party. So the proponents of the opposing bill, House Bill 3310, they say that bill is the true closed primary bill because there isn't a mechanism that allows anyone other than a registered voter for that party at that time to participate. And their claim is that the option in 3643 that you can literally just vote and then automatically be registered, that's just sort of a waste of time because, you know, you're going to have Democrats who are going to do that, and then they're just going to unregister right after the election.
Well, here's the problem that you've got with 3310. And this is huge, by the way. People need to understand this. We typically, let's use the governor's primary coming up this year as an example. We'll have 500,000 to 600,000 people probably vote in that primary. If 3310 was law today, that means you would probably have half that many people vote in our primary, because what would happen is, under that bill, people have to pre-register to vote in our primary. And they're all not going to know to do that, remember to do that, no matter how much money we or candidates spend, millions of dollars trying to bug and pester everybody into registering ahead of time, because they've spent their life in many cases voting in the Republican primary, just walking down and voting. They're used to that. So we're going to have a circumstance where tens of thousands of good, strong, conservative Republicans who are used to voting in our primaries would show up and get turned away at the polls. Well, that's a national story.
Yeah.
That is, just a way to run people off from your party. The last thing we want is people who've been good, solid Republican primary voters for years to not be able to participate in our process.
Exactly. Yeah. Drew McKissick's chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party, and that hearing is what day this week?
That is this coming Wednesday at noon. And by the way, you can go to scgop.com on our homepage, scgop.com, and you can get involved in our campaign to pass this bill and find out other information on it. Love to have you be a part of it.
Sure thing. Always a pleasure. Appreciate your time. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Firmin Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.